Yesterday, nature showed its full power in Abilene County, Texas. What started as a warm and humid spring afternoon quickly turned into a terrifying battle against one of the strongest storms of the season. The quiet town of Dublin, famous for its small-town charm and historic soda heritage, suddenly found itself directly in the path of a violent supercell thunderstorm. In just a matter of minutes, peaceful streets turned into scenes of destruction. Massive hailstones slammed into homes, shattered car windows, destroyed rooftops, and left residents scrambling for safety. Tonight, we're taking a closer look at what led up to this dangerous storm, the frightening moments when the ice began to fall, and the difficult recovery that now lies ahead for the people of Dublin. The day had started like any normal Sunday in May. Families were returning home after church services. Local businesses along Patrick Street were busy with their usual weekend customers. Everything felt calm, familiar, and routine. But high above the town, the atmosphere was quietly building towards something much more dangerous. Meteorologists at the National Weather Service office in Fort Worth had already begun watching conditions closely. They noticed a highly unstable air mass developing across north-central Texas. Warm, moisture-rich air flowing in from the Gulf of Mexico was colliding with a strong cold front moving across the region. This combination created the perfect setup for severe thunderstorms. Experts described it as an atmospheric powder keg, just waiting for the right spark. And that spark came fast. According to senior meteorologists, radar scans showed one of the most dangerous storm signatures possible, a classic hook echo. This pattern is often a warning sign of a rotating supercell, the type of storm capable of producing tornadoes, destructive winds, and giant hail. Inside this storm, the updrafts were incredibly powerful. Winds were estimated to be moving upward at speeds of more than 100 miles per hour. Think of it like a giant elevator inside the sky. These intense updrafts lifted raindrops far above the clouds and into the freezing layers of the atmosphere. There, tiny particles like dust, dirt, or ice crystals became the center of something much bigger. As the particles were carried up and down again and again, layers of ice began forming around them. Each trip through the storm added another frozen layer. The hailstones kept growing larger, heavier, and more dangerous. Eventually, they became too heavy for the updrafts to hold, and that's when they came crashing down. What fell from the sky wasn't ordinary hail. It was what storm experts call giant hail. Some residents described it as looking like chunks of broken concrete falling from the clouds. Some stones were the size of golf balls, others were as large as baseballs, and in some parts of Dublin, hailstones were reported to be nearly 4 inches in diameter. These were not smooth, harmless ice balls. They were jagged, sharp, and incredibly heavy. When they hit rooftops, they punched holes through shingles. When they struck vehicles, they shattered windshields instantly. Windows exploded, trees snapped, metal bent, and for many residents, the sound was unforgettable. It wasn't just rain hitting the roof, it sounded like the sky was throwing rocks. I'm standing here just outside Dublin, Texas, where the damage from yesterday's storm is impossible to ignore. Everywhere you look, there are signs of destruction. Take a look at this windshield behind me. It's not just cracked, it has been completely destroyed, shattered into thousands of pieces by massive hailstones falling from the sky. Residents here say the sound during the storm was unlike anything they had ever heard before. One person described it as sounding like a freight train made of glass. For nearly 20 terrifying minutes, the town felt like it was under attack. People rushed for cover as giant hail pounded homes, cars, and businesses without mercy. One resident told us she was standing in her kitchen when everything suddenly changed. She said the sky turned a strange and unsettling shade of green. Then came the noise, and she knew immediately this was no ordinary storm. She said it didn't sound like rain hitting the roof. It sounded like someone was throwing bricks at her house. Her family ran to the interior hallway, grabbed blankets, and huddled together for protection. All they could do was wait and pray. From inside, they could hear bedroom windows shattering one after another, each crash bringing more fear, each second feeling longer than the last. When the storm finally passed, the damage left behind was overwhelming. Local insurance adjusters say hundreds of homes across Dublin suffered roof damage. Shingles were ripped apart, skylights were smashed, water poured into living rooms and bedrooms. Even schools were hit. The Dublin Independent School District reported broken skylights and minor flooding inside several classrooms. But some of the most visible destruction happened in parking lots and along the highways. Car dealerships were especially hard hit. Rows of brand new trucks and SUVs were left covered in deep dents. Many vehicles had shattered glass and severe body damage, making them impossible to sell. For some business owners, the losses are already reaching into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Storm chasers from across the country had been tracking this supercell as it moved across Airth County. Many of them captured terrifying footage from inside the storm itself. In one video, a storm chaser's reinforced vehicle can be seen shaking violently as giant hailstones slam against its windows. The impact sounds like non-stop explosions. Even with reinforced polycarbonate glass, the force of the hail was enough to make the entire vehicle vibrate. One storm chaser can be heard yelling over the deafening noise, saying this was some of the largest hail they had seen all season. And the destruction didn't stop in town. Dublin's agricultural community also took a major hit. The surrounding ranches, dairy farms, and crop fields were hit just as hard. Young crops were flattened within minutes. Fields that had taken months of work were damaged in a single afternoon. Livestock scattered, searching for any shelter they could find. For local farmers, this storm wasn't just frightening, it was financially devastating. A representative from the local Farmers Bureau said people in this region are used to tough Texas weather, but storms like this leave scars that last far beyond one day. This is the kind of setback that can affect the entire harvest season, and for many families, recovery will take months. But as the storm clouds moved away and the sun began to set over battered Dublin, something else began to appear: the strength of the community. Neighbors stepped outside carrying chainsaws, ladders, and tarps. People checked on each other. Families helped families. Strangers became volunteers. By nightfall, the streets were filled with the sound of hammers instead of hail. Temporary repairs were made to protect homes from the evening rain. Roofs were covered, broken windows were boarded up, and despite the destruction, hope was starting to return. Volunteer organizations quickly set up support stations across town. They began distributing water, food, and emergency supplies for families whose homes were no longer safe to live in. For many residents, the road ahead will be long, but one thing is already clear. Dublin may have been hit hard by this storm, but it was not broken.
One resident said that when lightning lit up the sky, he looked out the window and saw something he'll never forget. His equipment shed, something that had stood on his property for years, was suddenly lifted off the ground by the force of the wind. Within seconds, it was gone, torn apart and scattered across the field like paper. For many people across Atascosa County, that moment captured just how powerful this storm really was. Downed power lines and uprooted mesquite trees quickly turned county roads into dangerous obstacle courses. Some roads became completely blocked, making it difficult for emergency crews to reach isolated homes in rural neighborhoods. Firefighters and first responders had to use chainsaws just to clear a path. Every fallen tree meant more time, and in an emergency, every minute matters. In Pleasanton, the county's largest city, the damage was just as severe. Massive oak branches covered residential streets. Some crashed directly onto parked vehicles, crushing windshields and roofs. Others punched through homes, leaving families dealing with both storm damage and sudden exposure to the weather. As the center of the storm moved through, the electrical grid began to fail. Entire neighborhoods went dark. According to utility providers and local cooperatives, more than 17,000 customers across the greater San Antonio and Atascosa region lost power at the same time. For many families, the storm didn't just bring fear, it left them sitting in complete darkness. But fallen trees were only part of the problem. The storm also unleashed an extraordinary amount of lightning. Meteorologists estimate there were more than 200 cloud-to-ground lightning strikes per minute during the most intense part of the storm. That level of electrical activity is enough to overwhelm almost any power system. Several transformers were damaged or completely destroyed. Utility crews were sent out immediately to begin repairs, but the danger wasn't over. Repeated waves of lightning forced many crews to stop working and pull back to safety. Repairing elevated power lines during an active lightning event is extremely dangerous, and in some cases, deadly. So while crews worked as fast as possible, safety had to come first. And it wasn't just the wind causing problems. The rainfall totals were equally alarming. Automated rain gauges near the Atascosa River recorded between 3 and 5 inches of rain in less than 3 hours. That much water in such a short time created dangerous flash flooding conditions almost instantly. Low water crossings began rising fast. Roads that looked safe one minute became deadly traps the next. The Atascosa County Emergency Management Office quickly issued a "turn around, don't drown" warning, reminding drivers not to risk crossing flooded roads. In Texas, floodwater can be just as deadly as tornadoes or hail, and officials wanted residents to take that threat seriously. Still, amid all the destruction, there was one small piece of good news. Hydrologists say the heavy runoff from this storm is now moving downstream into the Frio and Atascosa River basins. That water is expected to help replenish two critical reservoirs, Choke Canyon Reservoir and Lake Corpus Christi. Both have been struggling with serious drought conditions over the past year. So while the storm brought destruction on the surface, it may also provide long-term relief for the region's water supply. County leaders are now focused on the next steps. The Atascosa County Judge, along with local mayors and emergency officials, is expected to complete a full damage assessment by Monday afternoon. That process will help determine how much state and federal assistance may be needed. For now, one major relief stands out. There have been no confirmed fatalities. Officials say that is largely thanks to early weather warnings and the fact that many residents took shelter in interior rooms before the worst of the storm arrived. Emergency officials say their top priority right now is clearing the main roads for ambulances, fire trucks, and utility vehicles. Restoring power to hospitals, emergency centers, and critical facilities is also at the top of the list. A spokesperson from the County Emergency Operations Center made the message clear. They said residents need to remain patient as crews work around the clock. And most importantly, if you see a downed power line, assume it is live. Do not go near it. Do not try to move it. Stay away and report it immediately. Because even after the storm passes, the danger can still be very real.